Welcome to talkSPORT Cricket. I'm Cameron Ponsonby and I'm joined as ever by the Telegraph's Will Macpherson. The match here has just finished. Well, you might be watching this tomorrow. We're just going to give you a little debrief of what Ben Stokes has said after play and what this series means for looking forward to England's Test summer. First of all, Ben Stokes, he was more... Is realistic the right word following a defeat?
Yeah, people talk about the baseball as making a lot of sort of hot air noises, if that's the thing. But he was quite, realistic. It's a good word. He was also very clear and lucid. He actually used the word baseball, covered this team for the last couple of years, and I've never heard him say the word baseball. I know they generally hate it. You do get a few players saying it in private, kind of around the place, but him and McCullum particularly object to it. He did couch it by saying it's a media term, but he used the word. He basically said, write us off at your peril. Write me off at your peril, write this team off at your peril. They're going to use the pain of this defeat to get stronger, be better. Which I thought were good words to hear. There wasn't much sugarcoating from Stokes there, and I do think that's been a problem in this England setup, that they make some silly noises that they can come to regret, and there's been a few sticks that have been used to beat this England team with, particularly in this series. Actually, they've said some silly things around the targets they might want to chase, and taking credit for India's excellence and all those kind of things. But I thought that was a very good press conference from Ben Stokes.
I guess with this, the difference of this match compared to the rest of the series was, in the rest of the series, England had moments in each occasion where they could then say after play, we'll win, we'll come back tomorrow, we're still in this contest. This was the only match this series where India were completely dominant from start to finish. And I think it kind of then tempered those kind of words and those phrases that you heard from the group coming out afterwards, because they just couldn't say those things. It is now 7 losses in England's last 12, and I know that comes from having played India and Australia, but it's still nevertheless not a fantastic record. Do you sense that there might be changes looking ahead towards England's home Test summer?
I think that England need to use this as a line in the sand, if you like. Brendan McCullum's on a 4-year deal. We know that English cricket works. It stumbles from Ashes tour to Ashes tour, and there's normally a change in management after that. I don't think many of us who are close to the team expect Brendan McCullum's deal to be extended beyond the 4 years he's currently booked in to do. Ben Stokes will be 34 by the end of that Ashes series, the way his body's been. He's not someone you see playing at 37, 38. There's a generation of players who will be. I think Joe Root, that might be he's getting towards the end of his career as well at the end of the Ashes tour. He'll be 36. So, I think this needs to be a halfway house. They have still had a positive 2 years under Stokes and McCullum, even after this poor run of results that you reference. But I think the team needs a bit of refreshing. They essentially stuck with the team that Joe Root captained when Stokes took over. Now, obviously, there's been some new players who've come through. Harry Brook, who's not been on this tour, is probably the best example of that. But they basically stuck with the same set of players. Those players are obviously ageing now, and I do think there's a bit of evolution, a bit of a shift towards a few extra people who, ages start with a 2 would be handy. And I could see that happening this summer. They've got some big decisions to make. They've got to work out who their wicketkeeper is and stick with that through to the Ashes. You'd think Harry Brook comes straight back in at number 5, because Johnny Bairstow has not had a spectacular series by any measure. Whether that means Bairstow takes the gloves or Bairstow drops out, Ben Stokes keeps the gloves, or both of them drop out. I think that's a genuine option, and they might look at that debate. Bairstow Stokes, it's so long running, it's quite boring, because it's kind of simplified a lot to people make it sound like Ben Stokes is this extraordinary keeper who never makes a mistake but can't score a run, and Johnny Bairstow is this extraordinary batter whose ceiling is unbelievably high but can't take a catch. It's obviously not that simple, but I wonder whether they might just look for something a little bit more down the middle. Someone who could average 37, say, in slightly more stress-free fashion, but also take his catches generally. I think that's something they might look at.
It will be really interesting, because Ben Stokes has said from the get-go that he doesn't really believe in kind of future planning. It's more, we'll pick the best 11 for this Test
Be where
match.
your feet are.
Be where your feet are, exactly. And one of our colleagues was, and these maths might be slightly off, but from Ben Stokes taking over with 23 Test matches into his kind of captaincy, and it's another 23 Test matches until the end of that Ashes series. So we are at a halfway point. And as you said, we had the crescendo of having a home Ashes series and then India away, and then the end of the next 23 Test matches is India at home, Australia away. So for the first time, with that idea of being able to build towards those marquee series, whether you agree with that process or not. Do England look to a new generation this summer? And the two places those generations potentially are, as you said, the wicket-keeping situation. If they weren't to go with Ben Stokes or Johnny Bairstow and they were to go for a third option, you're probably looking at Ollie Robinson from Durham or Jamie Smith from Surrey, which
James
has
Rue possibly, but I would say probably the Ollie Robinson would be a good candidate. I think he's the guy they might be looking at most clearly. It's difficult to pick Smith because, as good as they think he is, and they think he's really, really good, he doesn't keep for Surrey, and Surrey are not going to stop Ben Stokes keeping at the start of the season to give Jamie Smith a chance with the glove. So yeah, I think there are younger options. Also, if you think about it's actually a whole decade of best since Matt Pryor retired this summer, and it's been Bairstow, Buttler, Folkes, and it's been this very complicated kind of psychodrama where they've kind of, Buttler played 50 tests, almost all of them as a keeper. Bairstow's played 100 tests, about half of them as a keeper. Now Folkes has played 25 tests, all of them as a keeper. So it's been, I just wonder whether maybe you look at that Ashes series, that India series at home, and you just look and think, is this time to refresh? What I'd also add is that the remainder of this year, England have got a hell of a lot of test matches. They've got 12, but the two winter tours are not new. They're Pakistan and New Zealand. They've done them before. I think they're kind of consolidation tours for England. They're not new frontiers. I know you want to respect every single test match you play, and then this summer at home, you strongly would expect them to beat Sri Lanka and West Indies. And I know England always lose to West Indies. Sri Lanka have actually got a relatively good record at home. I was going to say you definitely expect to win 5 of those games. I think there's banana skins there. There's opportunities to lose games. I think West Indies' bowling attack could cause this top order some real trouble. But overall, in the round, I'd expect England to win both those series.
It's interesting that this series we're just reflecting on now, England scored fewer runs than they expected, and India didn't necessarily score more runs than we expected them to. The bowling attack kind of held itself together. However, the batting lineup seems the safer of the two halves of this team, or the more stable. If we go forward to the summer, Duckett and Crawley will definitely still be at the top. Pope is going to need some runs, but he's the vice-captain. There's no real...
I don't think he's going anywhere.
Exactly, there's no indication. Then you go Root, Brook comes back in at 5, Ben Stokes at 6, and then you have the wicket-keeping debate. But in that lower order with the bowlers, there is the idea of maybe Chris Woakes comes back in. Does Bashir now push Jack Leach, having taken another fifer? Are England going to look to freshen up with another pace, quick bowler like Gus Atkinson or Josh Tong? Do you see, in the same way as the wicket-keeping, just to basically put you on the spot, do you see England changing their frontline spinner? Do you see Atkinson or Tongue coming in for, God forbid, Jimmy Anderson?
I definitely think Atkinson and Tongue will play test matches this summer. They've got 2-year deals, as do Matt Potts and Bryden Cast as well. So I think Potts will play quite a lot this summer. I think a frustration for me is I don't actually think we've learned anything about England's seamers on this tour.
Yeah.
They failed to give Gus Atkinson a game. They've probably played Mark Wood, who's a bit of a blunt instrument in these conditions. They've probably played him one game too many. Ollie Robinson, maybe they did learn something about him, but if they did, it wouldn't be positive. And Jimmy Anderson, yes, he is wonderful, but maybe on this tour, they needed more of a workhorse somewhere. And I didn't think Matt Potts would go as well for the Lions as he did in these conditions. He took loads of wickets. I think I probably would have kept him on for the remainder of the tour at that point. But they're all about a close-knit group and not keeping it too.
Collingwood and Trescothick were substitutes.
Yeah, they had that few boots on the ground that they're in that situation. I would say that. I think the spin debate is a real live one. It's a big test of Ben Stokes' loyalty to Jack Leach. Jack Leach has become a really solid operator. The question is Shoaib Bashir, and I think it would be Shoaib Bashir, not Tom Hartley, actually, especially after where he bowled here. I think it would be Shoaib Bashir who they'd maybe back. You could see how he could be effective in Australia, given that, I know it's a hell of a comparison, but given how Nathan Lyon's done. Yeah. And left arm spinners in Australia tends to be quite ugly, as Leach discovered on the last tour. So that's a big question. I could see it. But yeah, I think the seam bowling needs a refresh this summer. The reason Anderson, I don't think, is going anywhere is because he's still the best option. They still haven't got anyone better. Like Chris Woakes will play this summer. That's fantastic. He turned 35 last week. So yeah, and then obviously there's the eternal Jofra Archer question. He's not going to the IPL, but yeah, there's plenty for England to think about there.
That's it from us in India. talkSPORT will be continuing their cricket coverage through the summer. Make sure you're following on the Following On podcast, the YouTube channel, and on the radio. I've been Cameron. This has been Will Macpherson from the Telegraph. I'm sure we'll see you again very shortly.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.